Hello, everybody. This is Marlon, the writer for Ashita no Anime, and we're back today with my old buddy Eric. And today we're going to be talking about Blue Exorcist. And to mix things up, instead of talking about a series that one of us hates and the other of us loves, we're going to be talking about it. We're going to be talking about Blue Exorcist as a series that both of us liked, I think, but didn't absolutely love. Is that kind of your estimate as well, Eric?
Uh, yeah, no. If we had talked about this earlier this week, I would have been completely in love with it.
Before you watch the second half.
Yep.
Hmm. So let's go ahead and start there. Why did you think that it fell apart in the second half? I mean, I thought that, well, the second half definitely had a different feel to it, but I didn't think it was bad. I mean, the story it was telling was different, but I don't think that it was a bad change. What's your take on it? Why did it fail?
Well, actually, before we go completely into how it failed, I kind of want to take the opportunity to not be the most negative one on the podcast. One of the first things that really drew me into the series was the music, which is by a guy named Hiroyuki Sawano, which doesn't mean a whole lot, and the name wouldn't have meant a whole lot until I did some research, but it turns out it's actually the guy who did the music for Sengoku Basara and
Uh,
for Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorns OVA, which is like one of the best soundtracks I have ever heard to anything, and I love me some soundtracks.
I like
So,
soundtracks too, but I'm more of a open-ending theme kind of guy rather than just like the actual music within a series.
right, but this music, I, it really, it's really quite fantastic. It combines some really excellent like symphonic pieces with
Hmm.
more modern stuff. It's definitely something that I would listen to on my own.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
I find that a little strange. I never really picked up on Blue Exorcist having a particularly strong soundtrack. I mean, if I think about it, the only two series immediately off the top of my head that I can think of where okay, I got three series now that I thought about it. There's three series that really drew me in because of their soundtracks, and the first one was Escaflowne, the second one was Cowboy Bebop, and the third one was Samurai Champloo.
yeah.
Those all had really good hard soundtracks that really stood out from the work, and I guess I'll have to take another look at Blue Exorcist and listen to the soundtrack again, because
I,
usually when the soundtrack stands out like you're talking about, I usually notice it. But oh,
I think Blue Exorcist soundtrack works great because it wants to explicitly be like a background sound music. A
hmm,
background sound music. I like that.
BGM.
Yeah, it's not really trying to be the standout star of the show like it is in Bebop
That's Samurai
right
Champloo.
or Shamrock. Yeah, that. But it's really just excellent. It works really well with the animation that's going on screen. It was surprisingly liking. It
I'll,
was surprisingly good.
I'll take note of that and make another listen.
Yeah, and right. So aside from the music, probably the second thing that drew me in was pretty much every character.
Hmm.
Like I
Yes.
absolutely
Yes,
love the
definitely.
characters of Blue Exorcist.
Yes. All very distinct, all very relatable, even in their flaws and their personalities. I thought.
Right. So to compare this to other series we've talked about, and actually I think that this is probably the best place to compare it to Excel World. I think that Rin is how you do a complete loser of a protagonist the proper way.
How so?
Um, well, he's pretty much a complete screw up. He doesn't really have anything going for him other than his cooking abilities.
Hmm.
Like I think you have to give a loser of a protagonist at least one thing that the audience can really get behind, something that they're really good at.
So Haruyuki's gaming didn't count.
Uh, Not really, considering how easily that could be co-opted by pretty much
Yeah.
everyone else in the universe.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's the entire thing in the first episode, is that we see that he's really good at gaming, which is great, I guess, but then he's beaten by someone who is essentially cheating, but I mean, then the series is going to surround him with people who are essentially cheating. So I think that really weakens Haruyuki as a character.
All right.
But Rin is like fantastic. He's fun as a shonen protagonist. I don't necessarily know that he's like a particularly great or stand outish shonen protagonist, but he's fun, interesting to listen to. He's got a wacky cast of characters that are eccentric in their own ways, and honestly, it's
And they never feel too much sidelined either. They all have their own strengths to contribute as well. They feel like they have reasons to be there.
yeah, like there are a couple characters throughout the series that I think get kind of a short shrift and don't get the proper attention that I really wish they had. But
My personal favorite was Shiemi. I thought that she should have taken a little bit more charge, but then again she was the your standard kind of shy character.
Moy Blob. Actually, I really should have hated Shimi. Like, I kind of expected to based on character designs that I saw of her. But she is actually probably the one character who I think the show treats the best, in that it actually gives her a character arc.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know that I would have. I don't know that I would say that she should have taken center place more often. But I think that as far as she did, she had like a wonderful, wonderful character arc throughout the series.
Yeah, being a minor character, she definitely developed. She had a full circle going for her.
Right. And it was actually really nicely understated. So like, you don't really pay that much attention to her, but if you do pay attention to her, it's kind of a surprise when she takes the charge in that late series episode and puts on the birthday party. Mm-hmm. But you can very clearly see as a viewer how she got from there, from the very beginning when she showed up, and she very much would not have thrown a birthday party.
Absolutely. Really, the part that solidified her character for me was actually quite early on. When she was basically getting strung around by Izumo, because it reminded me of just something I heard some girls talking about back in college. Was this off-campus girl that I knew lived in a house with a bunch of guys because she did not like hanging out with other girls, because she said when you get too many girls together in one place, quite often they fight and they don't like each other. They get on each other's nerves. And so seeing that kind of interaction between Shiemi and Izumo really kind of like struck me like, yeah, I get that. It's relatable on some level, I think. I'm obviously I'm not a woman, but I think that based on testimony that I've heard, that it's good character growth. It's a logical situation for her to be in.
Yeah, this show actually really does some interesting things with character relationships that I can't say that I've seen a lot of animes do well. Like, there is that whole Shimi and Izumo relationship, which was really fascinating to watch evolve. And then there's also the Yukio and Rin relationship, which is very much a brother relationship that I haven't seen before. Like, when I first suggested we do this, I said I wanted to compare it to Full Metal Alchemist, specifically because of this relationship. And I still want to compare it to Full Metal Alchemist, but for entirely different reasons now. But in Full Metal Alchemist, you have like these two brothers who are completely inseparable, regardless of what terrible things happen. And if they have any conflict at all, it's because of an external source. But here with Rin and Yukio, you have two brothers who are more or less constantly butting heads, but not because of like external things that other people do to them, but because of their own personalities and their own history.
But and then I want to even take that further. But if you think about it, it's because of external forces that they must stay together.
Well, yeah, they're not really given any choice, and
No.
it's really fascinating watching that because I can definitely see that Rin really wanted to be with his brother, but his brother kind of hates him,
Yeah.
and
Pretty clear.
I really liked their I really liked watching Yukio really struggle with that with being with someone that he really hated for some very reasonable means, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I rewatched a fair bit of Blue Exorcist almost as soon as it finished, and there are definitely some little cues that you can pick up on to see that it's very good at referencing that. You may have not have picked up on it the first time, and I like those little things. I've actually gotten a lot better at noticing them the first time through when I watch a series now.
Yeah, like there's a scene in that first episode where you really deal with Bon, where Rin jumps into the pit to save Bon from the demon frog, and at the very end you see Yukio is just standing there with his gun, and as a viewer you're not sure if he was going to shoot the demon or if he was going to shoot Rin,
Yeah,
and there's honestly equal odds on both.
yeah.
And yeah, I love that, and that's something that I haven't seen too many anime do, or do well at the very least. And I think that Blue Exorcist really excelled at that.
I was just thinking about something else to think about Blue Exorcist as comparing to Full Metal Alchemist. The brothers' teachers. They in I cannot remember the name of the teacher in Full Metal Alchemist, but Shura um, in Blue Exorcist is a teacher to both of the brothers. And what do you think about that relationship as far as how anime typically treats the teacher relationship in these kinds of
Uh,
shonen series?
I don't think it really treated it that differently from others, honestly.
Hmm.
It was, yeah, no, I don't think it really treated it all that differently. You're thinking of, Izumo, that's her name, from, Full Metal Alchemist. And if you look at it, uh, Izumo and Ed and Al pretty much have the same relationship that Rin does with Shura, in that they are very much not equals, but eventually they become treated like equals. And Yukio's relationship with Shura is definitely more advanced to the point where they have like begrudging respect for each other. It's I don't know that it's really that different.
Hmm.
But then
Yeah.
I also think that Shura is a character who really got short shrift.
Yeah. She came on strong at first, and then she just kind of petered off. I mean, it kind of is the nature of the student to surpass the master. I mean, that's what you want to have, but at the same time, she had some other roles to play in the church that seemed like it wasn't entirely reasonable for her to for her role to diminish to the degree it did.
Right. Plus they're really cagey about her past, which I
Yeah.
don't necessarily think needs to be going into, but
Hmm.
there are some implications that she is like at least a demon like Rin, and that was like, oh, so is this another demon who's doing work for the church?
Well, there's all kinds of
I
demons. There's all kinds of demons doing work for the church. It wouldn't surprise me.
yeah, I don't count Mephistopheles. I really don't count Mephistopheles.
Hmm.
But like it's not something that would really surprise you, but on the other hand, I'm surprised that it never really got commented on, especially when in a flashback she is shown to be riding on a dragon, which I don't
Yeah.
know, that there was a lot of hints at something greater there that never really went into.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and a similar tone, like pretty much every character introduced in the back half of the series has something similar. There was also the current paladin,
Angel.
Yeah, Angel, who shows up for like 4 scenes. He could do some really cool things. They try to establish him as like a really huge antagonist source, but it doesn't really ever do anything, despite the fact that he even has a sword that he talks to. It's like, oh, okay, you're not going to show us anything about this. That's kind of disappointing. But, yeah.
One of the things that really solidified Blue Exorcist as a good turn in what had been going on in shonen, at least for me at least, and the kind of anime that I had been watching as far as shonen action series go, was right around that time was the time that I quit Naruto. So I was really surprised to find myself liking another shonen action series, and it was just like, okay, I can do this because it's only going to be 24 episodes and it's going to have closure.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. They're continuing on and going and doing more adventures. That's not closure.
Okay, end of a chapter at least.
Even then, I don't... Like, okay, you're bringing up, in your initial, in your final review for the site, you brought up Bleach and Naruto, which are honestly 2 of the worst shonen series to happen in modern history.
But they started out good. They started out good, and then they turned into monsters.
They both started out great, and then they became super popular, which is really what killed it. I'm actually really surprised that Blue Exorcist apparently hasn't, but then that's also a monthly series as compared to a weekly series.
That could do it. Blue Exorcist is definitely popular over here. You see all kinds of merchandise still to this day. When you go to like the Animates, and every once in a while the convenience stores over here do a little Blue Exorcist promotion. I mean, it's still popular.
I just noticed that it had a movie too this year. So
there's a movie coming up. If it isn't already out.
Right. So I guess it is still popular. That's actually really good to know. I really liked the first half. Yeah, but I don't know. The second half was really... It felt like they were trying to do something that they couldn't. This is actually another case where I really wanted to compare it to Full Metal Alchemist, the original series, anyway, where...
Yeah, not Brotherhood.
Well, I'd really like to compare it to Brotherhood because Brotherhood was really good, but I just can't. Where they started a series and then they eventually caught up with what was released, and so they had to do their own completely separate thing. And honestly, that's the part of FMA that's really the worst, which is the second half where they had to do their own thing. It just really wasn't cohesive, and it went pretty much down into melodrama for the sake of melodrama. I mean, one of the final revelations of the original Full Metal Alchemist series was that alchemy was essentially powered by the Holocaust, which I think was a completely stupid thing to do, and it was so terrible, and it really retroactively ruined a lot. And I don't think that I don't think Blue Exorcist gets that bad, but
yeah, I actually have read a little bit about writing fantasy series and what components you need, and I actually read an article that said there comes a point where you need to stop explaining things, and you just need to just let it be, and just let it be what it is, because when you over-explain certain things, it can really spoil the magic, pardon the pun, or pun intended almost,
right.
Of what you're trying to create. I mean, there needs to be some mystery to it in a way. It doesn't need to all be fully fleshed out as the theory of alchemy. This is I don't know where I was going with that, but
Right. That's probably the major failing to the original Full Metal Alchemist series, in addition to the stupid melodrama and angst for every character, whether they deserved it or not. Um, and quite frankly, I love Bones, and Bones has a lot better writers than this studio does. So I still think that even with that stupid revelation, the original Full Metal Alchemist still has a better back half than Blue Exorcist.
hmm.
My so I guess I'm kind of dancing around it, but my major problem with the back half of Blue Exorcist is that for most of the events to happen, you have to completely ignore the character development that's happened throughout the entire first half and or make the characters stupid. And if you have to make the characters stupid, then you don't have a good story. Unless the characters were
Oh,
originally stupid.
what makes you say they're stupid? I don't really get a feeling that they were stupid so much as that they just all kind of blended together. They kind of lost their personalities. They weren't doing their own distinct things. They were just moving forward as one unit. You almost could have like meshed them all into just one character for all the purpose that was needed for all of them to be there. You
And
didn't
you
need
would
all of them.
and you wouldn't have lost it. Okay, so for the first arc that was completely original and wasn't like thought up at all, or well, was originally thought up at all by the A1 Studios, the people who did this, was the one where Konekomaru allows himself to be possessed by the demon bird.
Right.
In order for quote unquote revenge on Rin, which at that point I just don't see happening. I mean, Konekomaru, which is the bald monk with the glasses, was shown to be the smartest of the three monks, and I don't think that he, of all people, would allow himself to work with a demon like that, since he is well aware, at the very least, of what that could possibly mean. I just could not see that happening in the first place, and then there's additionally the whole thing where they're all like, "Oh, Rin, you're not our friend anymore. Go fuck off." Never mind that they went and got his sword reforged for him and saved his life at the tribunal where Amaimon was put down really, really easily. It was really depressing.
Yeah, I can see that. Um, so what is it? I don't think that. Are you equating stupid with inconsistent,
I'm not.
or maybe as
I am saying that it is both stupid and inconsistent.
I don't know. In some ways, I can kind of understand all of a sudden finding that the guy that you've been hanging out with was the person that killed your parents. Would I can definitely see that as being a motivator for, all right, I'm not so cool with this dude anymore.
Right, but the problem is that in the episodes beforehand, they had saved his life despite knowing that. Like, they didn't have to go and get the sword reforged, and he probably would have died. If they had done nothing, I would have been completely okay with that. But then, in the episodes immediately after, they're like, no, screw you, you're not our friend anymore, despite the fact that we saved you. It was, really, really depressing. And then, if you want to talk about characters acting stupidly and completely against character, there's Yukio's entire thing during the essentially the last act, where he gets convinced by his grandfather to help him take over the true cross. And in no way will this be a backstab.
Yeah, I can kind of get it's what is it? It got a little grandiose there, didn't it?
It's not like I don't have a problem that it got grandiose. I've got a problem that it shouldn't have worked with the characters that they had established. Like, Yukio, of all people, like, okay, if you're not going to agree with me that Konekomaru was not too smart, Yukio is far and away the smartest character shown in the series, except for maybe Shiro. But okay, so Yukio, of all people, should have been able to see that this was probably going to be a backstab, and B, that killing every demon on the world would probably include the ones that they had grown to like, including the Ukubak and the Kate Shi, which I actually really like for a mascot character. I think Kuro was fantastic.
Mm. Yeah, that was definitely an oversight. I can definitely see that. Here's my whole take on them saving Rin, because Rin had been such a good friend to them. I think it was just kind of like, okay, this is our last. Their attitude at the time was just kind of like, this is our last show of friendship, good faith, because you were there for us when we needed you, but now then it's over, debt repaid, and then we're moving on. But at the same time, they were still holding on to it. I don't think that it was so inconsistent that to the degree that you had the problems with it, but I do think that it did have some problems.
I don't, no, I don't have problems that they saved him. I actually really like that. It plays well to the classic shonen tropes of friendship overcoming adversity, and which is like actually one of the major milestones that shonen manga, Shonen Jump at least, are built on. I've got no problem with that. It's the stuff that followed where they're acting on some of the darker stuff, and I don't think that that's really in the tone for the series as established.
Yeah.
The second half is, with the exception of one episode, really tonally dissonant from the first half in a way that I don't think plays to any of its strengths.
Yeah, the whole genocide on demons part really got to me. I think that's the one part that I think we can definitely both agree on is going to be the part that is inconsistent with what a lot of these characters are thinking about. Well, what they want, what they actually want the world to be. Because after all, Izumo is a summoner. She actually uses demons. Shiemi also a summoner. Kuro is a loyal demon. And there's Mephisto, who is just kind of doing his own thing.
Right, and but let's be perfectly honest. No one should trust Mephisto.
No, I'm not suggesting that in any way. But yeah, it didn't seem. It seemed very inconsistent with that Yukio should be working with them. Yeah, there were some problems, especially with the genocide in particular. I can. It did definitely add up to a few problems. It wasn't on my anime of the year, at least.
Right. It's just. And then there was that whole thing with in the last two episodes where they're trying to make Satan both a tragic antagonist and then just the classic, oh my god, I'm going to eat your face monster antagonist at the same time. And it's just like, you really can't have this both ways, sirs.
Yeah, schizophrenic.
Yeah. It's really a shame because I think that Blue Exorcist at its best has some really, really fantastic grasp on the characters.
Yeah, it could have made us a lot more sympathetic towards the characters than it accomplished.
Right.
Which is actually a good stepping point for one of the talking points that I wanted to kind of go into is Blue Exorcist is one of those anime that, as an atheist, I kind of look at it as Japan taking liberties with Christian mythology and as inspiration for a story, because you can take Norse and Greek and Roman and Egyptian and or Native American and all other kinds of mythologies from the past as your free little grab bag for writing just about any kind of fantasy story. But a lot of the modern religions don't get touched on so much. So as an atheist who doesn't believe that any of this is holy, I like that freedom that Japan has with its own culture, and that it can take that kind of source material and do its own little story and spin it. And it's not offensive either. It doesn't have to be offensive. And that's fine. It's just using it as source material, and I get a little kick out of that as an atheist. I think that's just that's just me speaking personally. Also, one of the reasons I like Evangelion.
Well, Evan, to be perfectly fair, the basis of pulling stuff from that for Evangelion was that it sounded cool more than anything else.
Well, they still pulled from it, but
yeah,
symbolism too, with all the angels exploding as crosses.
Again, that's something that they pulled because it was cool, not because it was particularly symbolic.
Yeah, but it was a consistent theme, though.
Well, yes, you can very easily make something explode in the same way. I don't know that that's necessarily a theme.
Well, but, you had Nerve with the fig leaf.
It looked cool. I don't really think that there was a whole lot of
logo with the snake in the apple.
Right, and then there's also the Sephiroth in Gendo's office, but I don't necessarily think that all of those were really thought through. In fact, I have read interviews where most of the symbols were chosen because they looked cool, not because they had any particular meaning.
I'm just saying, they did draw from a consistent theme. But let's get back to Blue Exorcist. What do you think about using Christianity as the very loosely as the set pieces for driving the story?
Well, again, I have to say I'm a pretty heavy agnostic atheist, so I'm not necessarily coming from that difference of a place that you're coming from, but I am very much okay with it. It doesn't really bother me. I mean, if it did, I would have to not play JRPGs from pretty much the Super Nintendo era on, because the Catholic Church has played as the enemy so many times. It's actually kind of hilarious.
Yes. Tales of the Abyss is what I'm thinking of right now.
Oh, and then there's stuff like Xenogears and other, pretty much any time a church shows up in an RPG, it's probably going to be evil.
Yeah, another good example of an anime where the church is the bad guy is a certain magical index.
Right.
Don't know if you watch that.
But I think it's interesting that the church is shown to not necessarily be a bad guy in this series. It's just used by some terrible people.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a nice change. And if I was that bothered by Japan co-opting religion, I would have to not play the Shin Megami Tensei games. And quite frankly, those are all quite excellent games. So how could I not?
I wasn't insinuating that even Christians should stay away from that. It's just something to take notice of.
Right.
I think that it's something that very distinctly says that this is something that came out of a non-American culture. Because I cannot imagine Blue Exorcist being made by an American studio. Just simply because of that.
I think a lot of the things would be very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that, it's
something you can only get away with in an anime.
Blue Exorcist is a very Japanese thing, and honestly, that's okay, I think.
Absolutely. I don't know. Anything else you wanted to
add? Not really. I think I've actually made my case here better than I have in any other podcast. It's just, I loved it so much until it stopped making me love it. I just think that the second half, by and large, forgets that it has characters. I mean, but then they also had that birthday episode where you get some really great character-driven jokes, like the fact that Rin and Yukio think that a Christmas cake is exactly the same as a birthday cake. That was one of the best moments of the series.
Yeah. What was it? But so Blue Exorcist did have a few of those episodes that really don't go anywhere. What do you think of that? There was the cooking episode, there was the beach episode, there was the birthday episode. Well, the birthday episode I really thought should not have been there. It should have been put onto one of the Blu-rays as an extra episode instead of being inserted into the main plot like that, because it really broke up the flow and really ruined that's the part that really stood out for me, that ruined the series for me. It was just like, don't do this now. It was a fine episode, don't get me wrong, but it's just like, timing couldn't have been worse.
The beach episode was dreck. I just want to get that out of the way. That had some really terrible writing, and it focused on a character, and it didn't really do anything interesting with her. And that was not a good episode. I love the cooking episode, and I have absolutely no problem with it existing, especially where it does, where everything is still pretty episodic. I think that the birthday episode is actually really required, because in the previous one you've got the stupid amounts of angst with the bird demon and the inconsistent characterization. And
do you think it's
everything.
a way of bringing everybody back together again?
I think it's
even though it mentions nothing of what's going on at the moment.
I think it's a moment of levity at a point where they hadn't quite built up to the next arc, which is the one with the Spider-Woman, or the last arc. So there really wasn't necessarily anything going on at the moment that it could interrupt. Plus, it's really the best example of Shimi's character growth, and it's honestly the last part of the series where you get a lot of the really good characterization for the secondary characters. Yeah. Like, you've got the other monk doing his really silly thing with the fortune telling at the beginning, and then Bon is shown to be a really good paper craft and completely out of left field, exactly like what you expect Bon's character. Izumo is controlling and really panicky about the tiniest possible things. Rin and Yukio continue to be amazing for the probably last time in the series. Yeah, it's just... I don't think that it's necessarily so out of place. I think that if you need to look at it at all as to its place in the series, it's a place to show exactly how far the characters have come.
I can respect that, but I still think that it needed to be put somewhere else, possibly as an extra episode, as I already said. But one more thing that I want to bring up is... this is something that I always look for in a shonen action anime, is pacing in the battles. There needs to be some flow. There needs to be ups and downs. There needs to be a moment where you think, okay, maybe he's not going to win, and maybe even there's some points where the protagonist fails. There's a chance for him to be let down, for him to pick himself back up and recover from a mistake that he's made. And that has flow to it. There is strategy. There is strength and weakness. There is balance. And that's something that I really like about Blue Exorcist, is that the fight scenes, they're all very well orchestrated. They're just well written. They're well written fights. You can't really say choreographed because we're not talking about real people here, but that's kind of like the same metaphor for animation.
You can say choreographed. There's still choreographed fights.
But going back to Sengoku Basra, there's none of that. It's just it's just overpowered boss characters beating the heck out of wimpy little flies and then butting heads together. There's no flow to it. It's just overpowered, boring.
Yeah, but you missed some very basic characterizations in Sengoku Basara, so I honestly kind of wonder if you watched it at all.
I did. I watched every
But
minute of it.
I'm
Of the
sure you
first
did.
5 episodes. I honestly did. I would not. I want to be fair on this.
Right, right. But I mean, and what you're saying is technically true about Blue Exorcist, but a lot of that still ultimately comes down to who's the strongest and a lot of rocks hitting each other. It's especially in the second half of the season or in the second half of the series
Yeah.
where
I will agree. The
most of
second
the
half
fights
is a lot more about
where
power
the fights are
level,
either
gritting your
glossed over
who can
or
grit their teeth the hardest. I definitely agree. The second half goes in that direction, involves a lot less strategy.
yeah, the second half is just terrible, and at least in the fights where the fights are either completely glossed over and like written out, like most of Shura's fights, or they're just ultimately come down to a few stupid sword swipes that aren't really great. I would say that this series has some excellent fight choreography, and I would also say that Sengoku Basara has some excellent fight choreography.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. You're supposed to completely ignore that they're rolling down the mooks because that's not where the game is. That's not where no one cares about the mooks. They're stupid. They're nameless. They're just hordes to be ripped through. That's the point. But between the named characters, the fights are excellent.
Yeah, I did not see any kind of development. Nobody had any kind of win really within the first 5 episodes. It was all just, oh, we neither of us can win. Our powers are equal. We'll have to end it here as a tie.
Right, because you're seeing the protagonists fight amongst themselves. You didn't really see most of them fight against the stronger evil forces at first, and then they would eventually wrap around to beating the evil forces and yada yada yada. It's a very classic shonen thing, and it honestly probably still works better as a video game, but I still think that it made a fairly interesting anime. And the fights here are okay, I guess. Like, there isn't a whole lot of strategy behind any of them at all. And I don't necessarily have to have strategy, and if I want to see strategy in fights, I'll read One Piece or JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where strategy is king in everything. But, the fights were really good in the first half of the series.
All right. So I guess we're just gonna have to agree to disagree as far as Sengoku Basara goes, because I did not see anything what you're talking about.
You also didn't see their characterizations, which were really, really simple. So I don't know.
Maybe that's just it. Maybe they're just overly simple.
I think you were probably going into that expecting a whole lot more than what you got. I very much tried to keep your expectations low for that.
Yeah, simple doesn't really cut it for me. I like really complex stuff. I'm going to get into that when I finally get around to watching some of those Blu-rays that I bought. I want to do an episode by episode synopsis of some of those series and the really deep complexities in them. But until then, are we finished now?
I don't really have a whole lot more to say about Blue Exorcist. I mean, it's like an exceedingly strong first half that's just continually let down by the second half.
Yeah, I was not as disappointed by the second half as you were, I think, but I think that if I remember correctly, I was definitely getting a little bit more bored with the second half than the first half. The first half definitely really sucked me in, and I think I just kind of stuck with the second half because I was already invested enough in it.
Yeah,
kind of as I'm doing right now for Sword Art Online.
That's exactly why.
Second half is just why. I'll finish it, but it's not gonna make me happy.
Yeah, that's exactly why. That's exactly why I continued to watch this. The first half was so strong and character driven in such a good way that the second half just couldn't hold up.
I don't think the second half was a complete waste of time either, though. But I thought that it definitely was not as strong as it could have been.
I would say that for anyone who's going to view this, as soon as the opening and ending changes, just watch episode 19, which is the birthday episode, and then completely ignore the rest of the series. Or just go read it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's kind of how I do it. Is if I liked a series, then I will read the manga. I kind of learned my lesson about reading the manga before watching the series. Unless it's a manga that I just picked up before a series came out. I'd already read it. That's kind of okay. But I decided when I really liked Sankarea. I watched the first 3 episodes of Sankarea and I realized, oh, the manga is much further than the series. I'm gonna go ahead and read the manga. So I read all of the manga and then I kept watching the series and I was very disappointed with the series because it was just I knew everything was gonna happen. So that's just how I do it from now on. Is I watch the anime before reading the manga from now on. I don't like the manga spoiling me anymore.
I don't know that I could do that. But then I really liked reading as my way of intaking a lot of anime, so that's just me.
And there's also the issue of some manga just flat out being better than the series. I'm looking at the big stack of Negima on my bookshelf. So much better in manga form than in anime form. So much better. Alright, so I think that's going to conclude our episode of Blue Exorcist today. I'm Marlon, and if you're interested in doing a podcast with me and voicing your opinion on anything anime or even Japan related, go ahead and get in contact with me. Leave a comment in the blog post. Leave a comment in the YouTube video. Send me an email. We'll get in contact and we'll see if we can schedule something. Hope you enjoyed listening today. See ya.